Ethics in business and accounting emerged as a major public concern following high-profile corporate collapses during the 1980s and again in the early 2000s that resulted in huge losses of personal savings and commercial investments. I strongly believe that ethics education and training will reduce corporate collapses globally in the future. I will discuss the many reasons for including ethics education in the syllabus and will also address and rebut the limitations of this idea. But firstly, I would like to discuss the collapse of Enron and the devastating impact that the lack of ethics can have on a company. Enron was a giant energy trading company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It was a very successful company, with its share price peaking at over $90 in August 2000, but it dropped to being worthless in December 2001 when Enron filed for bankruptcy. This was a result of the failings of the company to uphold ethical procedures. The board of directors is supposed to govern the activities of the company and ensure it is meeting protocols. However, the board at Enron was found to be involved in disguising $1 billion in losses to dupe investors and the public. Upper management was also found to put greed above the investors' best interests, awarding excessive amounts of bonuses and stock options to its employees, even when the company was in huge financial debt. Arthur Andersen was the accounting firm in charge of auditing Enron and also failed ethically. The firm failed to inform investors of Enron's losses and failed to ensure internal control policies were being used to keep track of losses. Andersen was also involved in the disguising of transactions that were not disclosed to the board. The collapse of Enron led to the collapse of Andersen, with Andersen having to pay $73 million US in compensation to Enron investors for his actions. This example shows the huge importance of ethics in the world. The unethical decisions and actions undertaken by Enron and Arthur Andersen led to millions of innocent people's lives being negatively affected. Families lost their life savings, lost their jobs, houses, and prosperity due to the selfish acts of others. If the board of directors and upper management had acted ethically and professionally, this disaster wouldn't have occurred. If the proper protocols and procedures were enacted, and those people working in these companies acted responsibly and morally, then it wouldn't have led to this collapse. This example shows that ethics education and training is vitally important. If the next generation of management and working professionals are taught proper ethical training, it will reduce corporate collapses in the future. I would now like to discuss the role and impact of ethical education and training. Early research in Australia and New Zealand university degree programs found that only 4% of institutions offered ethics as a standalone course in undergraduate programs, and none at the graduate level. I believe this is very worrying, as ethics education is very important. Some experts suggest the reason for this very low offering is due to barriers to ethical education. One of these barriers is that students won't be interested in ethical education, as it doesn't have any real-life implications. However, as discussed previously in the Enron example, ethics has a huge role to play in business and real-life situations. Ethical decisions are made almost every day, and it's important to teach students a method to handle these problems and react appropriately. Furthermore, a recent study into the opinions of university students found that on average, respondents disagreed with the notion that ethical problem-solving skills are irrelevant in business. Therefore, it was shown that respondents appreciate the ability of ethics education to increase students' ethical sensitivity and awareness. Another perceived barrier to ethical education is that it's too late to educate a student on ethics. Critics of ethics education contend that a student's ethical framework is fixed and cannot be modified by ethics education being offered at a stage when personal values are already established. Conversely, cognitive development theory suggests that a person's value system is not locked in and is subject to continued change. This is possible through emotional, behavioral, and cognitive interventions, education, or experiences. Secondly, the goal of ethics education isn't moral alteration or trying to implement a new moral compass in students. Instead, it aims to assist students to develop the skills necessary to identify and resolve ethical dilemmas. Therefore, it's never too late to educate a student on ethics. In summary, there are many reasons for ethics education. With the proper training, students will learn the necessary skills to deal with ethical decisions, and I believe it will reduce corporate collapses globally in the future.
Ethics education and training will have little or no impact on reducing corporate collapses globally in the future. Obviously, ethics is taught to enable employees to identify ethical problems in everyday issues and situations, in the hope the right outcome will occur. Ethics, I believe, is highly correlated with one's personal values. These personal values come from the way we are raised and the people we have surrounded ourselves with whilst growing up. A person's morals are not taught. They are simply embedded within the person we have become from the situations we have been placed in throughout our life. Training or education of ethics will not change the person we are. If we have strong beliefs in honesty, then when we are placed in the workforce, these values will make us inclined to act in such a way, act honestly. Yes, it may be suggested that attitudinal changes may occur throughout a person's life, but what if they don't? What if a certain person within the corporation simply cannot shake that characteristic or value which has lived with them for life through some pathetic attempt at teaching them to become a different person, teaching them to become ethical? To make matters worse, what if this person is in a high place of power within the corporation? They could lead the company along with others down a one-way street towards collapse due to them acting in a non-ethical manner. I do concede that acting unethical in business terms will most likely lead to corporate collapse. However, I am arguing that education and training of ethics is not a click of the fingers solution. It has been noted that many staff, when teaching ethics, may not know how to bring the discussion to a rational conclusion beyond the expression of personal views. This may be due to lack of appropriate experience, or simply staff members not delivering ethics training with such enthusiasm and quality. This may occur as ethics is sometimes overlooked. At the heart of all corporations is the desire to satisfy shareholders. Yes, this may be balanced with surviving in the long term, being ethical in a way business is conducted. However, what would shareholders rather see at a certain point in time? A company with a declining value or a company with an increasing value and therefore higher shareholder wealth? I know which one I would prefer. This increasing shareholder wealth could be at the expense of acting ethically. This is why corporations like Enron found loopholes, such as mark-to-market accounting, which took place when Jeffrey Skilling joined the company. Mark-to-market accounting requires that once a long-term contract was signed, income is estimated as the present value of net future cash flows. Often, the viability of these contracts and their related costs were difficult to estimate. Enron continued to recognize future profits even though the deal resulted in a loss. This inevitably led to the corporate collapse of Enron. Corporations, in my view, are only becoming more ethical, not due to ethics education and training, but simply because these corporations are being more highly scrutinized after such collapses as Enron. So I guess Enron mustn't have had ethics education and training, since that is the solution to corporate collapses, apparently. The July 2000 booklet of Enron's official code of ethics was nearly 65 pages long of extensive values and morals which Enron so-called believed in. The code of ethics by Enron begins with a letter from the founder and former CEO, Ken Lay, stating that he assures employees he conducts business in accordance with all applicable laws and in a moral and honest manner. The booklet continues on to talk about respect. We treat others as we would like to be treated ourselves. Ruthlessness, callousness, and arrogance don't belong here. My point here is, no matter the level of the training and education of ethical behaviour, people's personal values still stand true. Kenneth Lee Lay was convicted of 10 counts of securities fraud. All of this despite him himself knowing well and good that what he was doing was not ethical. All employees of Enron lost their pension funds. How, in any sense of the word, were Ken Lay's actions ethical? Greed is a word which comes to mind in regards to the actions of Ken Lay and his associate. In summary, I'll finish on a statement made within Enron's Code of Ethics. We have all worked hard over the years to establish our reputation for integrity and ethical conduct. We cannot afford to have it damaged. This confirms that no matter the level of training or education of ethics, money, greed, and other personal characteristics present within people of power will stand true and eventually lead to an inevitable corporate collapse. Thank you.